This movie was so close to being great, but they just kind of dropped the ball in the end. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you're probably thinking, wow, Tyler's filming in the daytime right now. Yeah, it just worked out that way this time. I also have a special guest here with me, my cat Luna. She's just sleeping right next to me, as you can see right here. Say hi, Luna. She's sleepy. So anyway, a few days ago, I went and saw In a Violent Nature. I went to a matinee screening on a Monday, and I was the only one in the theater. It was like the best way to watch this movie because I got to pick the best seat in the house, right in the center of the theater. I was alone in a dark room watching a horror movie. It was just so much creepier. If you don't know, In a Violent Nature is an independent, experimental horror slasher film about an undead killer who stalks and attacks a bunch of college kids in the woods. The story sounds very derivative, I know, but the unique thing about this movie is that instead of following the young victims, the movie actually follows the point of view of the killer. Right away, if that piques your interest, then I think you definitely need to see this film. If you love horror movies, especially slasher films, then you're going to want to see this movie. This film is basically showing you what a slasher villain does off screen in a slasher film. The planning, the walking through the woods to the next victim. And there is a lot of walking through nature in this film. There are a lot of long takes that are shot from behind the killer as we just follow him as he's walking through the woods to his next victim. It kind of looks like a video game at times. This movie actually feels like that scene in Halloween 2018 where we get that sequence of just following Michael Myers as he's going from like house to house killing these people. This is like that, but as a whole movie. This film is going for realism. It shows you the exciting side and the boring side of being a slasher villain. There's parts of this film where there's a lot of downtime and we're just watching the killer walk through the woods. It's the reason why I consider this film to be the John Dielman of slasher films. That's a deep cut for you cinephiles. Most of you will probably not get that reference. This movie is way more exciting and eventful than John Dielman, though. And no, I am not calling it by its full title that's ridiculously long. I had to watch that film in a film class, and I did not like it. Never again. It was so boring. It was 3 hours of, like, nothing. Back to In a Violent Nature, though. This film is kind of shot like a nature documentary. There's a lot of calm moments. That is until the slaughter starts happening. It's very beautifully shot. The sound design is great. This film is just a vibe. There's this one shot of the killer walking through this field of flowers as the sun is setting. And from the lighting to the composition, the whole shot is just perfect. Like, I want to frame that shot and hang it up on my wall. It looked amazing. Some of the kills in this movie are creative and gory and disturbing. They're exactly what you want in a slasher film. Some kills are really quick, while others happen off screen. You could really tell that this was a low-budget film because they only had the budget to show a few really gruesome kills, while others weren't given the same treatment. That's not a knock on the film, though. The crew here was clearly creative with their budget, and they clearly used it to the best of their ability. In fact, there is one kill in this movie that I straight up don't know how they accomplished, and that rarely happens when I watch a movie. I'll talk about it when I get to spoilers, and don't worry, I'll let you know when I'm going to talk spoilers for those who haven't seen the film yet. And speaking of spoilers, I'm definitely going to be talking about the ending because I did not like this ending and I thought it ruined the momentum that this film was building up. But more on that later. I like how information is given to us in this film. Because we follow a killer who doesn't speak the whole time, there isn't a ton of dialogue in this film. When we do get dialogue, though, it's coming from conversations between other characters that the killer overhears. Most of the time, dialogue is being said off screen or off in the distance, which really highlights the incredible sound mixing in this film. And speaking of sound, there is no music in this film except for the diegetic music within the film that is played by the characters. Like I said, the film is going for a realism style, and the lack of music really adds to the whole vibe of the film. Now I want to talk about some things that I didn't like about this movie. For starters, while I liked how the dialogue was presented in this film, the dialogue itself was written very poorly. These people do not talk like normal people. In the scene where we are first introduced to the college kids as they're sitting around a campfire, they sound so insufferable in that scene that I could not wait to see them get murdered. It's like they only talk in buzzwords. You know exactly the type of people that I'm talking about. This is something I can look past, though, in this movie, because I didn't go into this movie expecting good dialogue. I went in expecting good atmosphere and violent kills, and boy, do we get both of those things. The people in this movie are also so stupid. Like, there are so many moments where they could have survived, but they just chose not to, really. There's one death in this movie involving yoga. You've probably heard about it. It's probably the most gruesome death in the whole film, but the victim in that scene could have easily escaped, but she was an idiot and she just kind of froze and chose not to. It is a little frustrating when you watch these moments. Another problem that I had with this film is that it doesn't stick to its own rules. In the beginning of the film, it sets up its own rules by showing us that we're just going to be following this killer who's named Johnny in the film the whole time. But when we get to the campfire scene, the movie just stops following Johnny and instead focuses on these college kids for like 7 minutes as they exposition dump on us. And the whole time, we don't even see Johnny. And it's just implied that he's just standing around in the woods listening to these people. This isn't the only time that the movie breaks its own rules either, and I will talk more about that when I get to spoilers. I also want to address a criticism of this movie that I don't agree with. I've heard people criticize this film for being boring and having too much walking in it, and I just completely disagree with that. Maybe some people just don't have long enough attention spans, but I thought this movie had the perfect amount of walking through the woods. I mean, it's kind of the whole point of the movie. They're trying to build up the tension by showing you Johnny walking through the woods slowly, searching for his next victim. They use jump cuts in this film to skip ahead in time. You don't see him walk the whole way to the next victim or whatever. I think there are enough eventful things that happen in this movie to break up the monotony of Johnny just strolling through nature, planning his next moves. I mean, that's kind of what you're going into this movie for. Am I wrong? Is that not why people would be interested in this movie? To see the, careful planning of a slasher villain, to see him, pick out his mask and choose his weapons, deciding which people to go after first. You do get to see some, there's one scene in particular where you do see some careful planning on Johnny's part, and it's actually kind of clever the way that he tries to kill this one person using a car horn. I'll just say that without, giving anything away. I think this movie had the perfect balance of monotony versus actual gruesome kills. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I know this movie is not for everyone. Now I'm going to get into some spoilers, so if you haven't seen In a Violent Nature yet and you don't want it spoiled for you, then just skip ahead to the time code that you see on the screen now. If you don't care about spoilers or you have seen the film already, then by all means continue watching. Okay, so first I want to talk about that kill that I mentioned earlier that I have no idea how they accomplished it. So the kill that I was talking about was the one that's shot from an overhead view, and it kind of looks like Hotline Miami a little bit. It was a cool shot. And you see Johnny pick up this big rock and smash it on this guy's head, and his head just like explodes. And you see like blood and brain bits go all over the ground. It looked like just one continuous shot from the moment the guy's crawling away to where Johnny picks up the rock to finally him smashing it on his head. I didn't see any cuts in there. And normally when a kill like this is filmed in a movie, either it's CGI or they use a dummy head to smash. I don't think it's CGI because it's a low budget movie and I didn't notice any CGI anywhere else in the film. If this film was going to use CGI, I don't think they would have used it for just only one shot. And also, the blood and guts looked very real. It didn't look like CGI at all. It really did look like practical effects. So that leaves the other option, that it's a fake head. But usually, in a case like this, when they're gonna smash like a fake dummy head in a movie, they cut. And the dummy head is only on screen for like a frame or two before it gets smashed. But usually that's only possible by cutting. But that's not what happens in this scene. It's all one take. I want to see a behind the scenes documentary on how this movie was made because I want to know how they did that kill. If someone knows in the comments how they accomplished that shot, let me know. The other thing I want to talk about in regards to spoilers is the ending. Where do I begin with this ending? So this movie decides to break its rules for a second time, and they pull the camera away from Johnny as he's just going to town on this guy's head. First of all, let me talk about that for a second. That guy was a fucking idiot. The guy who's like, oh, I'm going to distract him so you can get away. And what does this guy do? He stands directly behind Johnny. He's like 2 feet away from Johnny. And he's right behind him. And he goes like, hey, dummy head or whatever. And Johnny immediately turns around and smashes him with like, I think it was like a machete. No, it was an axe. He turns around and just smashes his face with the axe. I was like, I audibly said out loud, you fucking idiot. And Johnny must have really hated this guy or something. I don't know what Johnny had against this guy, but he just goes to town on his head and just does not stop. We don't see him stop on camera. It continues off screen. So when that happens, the camera just stops following Johnny and then starts following the final girl. You know, the typical final girl in every, slasher film. We don't really know exactly what they were planning on doing, but they had a gas canister with them and a bear trap. So I don't know if they were going to trap them with the bear trap and like light them on fire or something. I don't know. But once she sees this guy get his head obliterated, she decides like, fuck it, I'm running away. She drops the bear trap and gas can and just leaves the locket on the gas can because that's really what Johnny was after this whole time. He just wants his mom's locket back. But then the camera just follows this woman as she runs away through the woods, and we're just following her for like a few minutes. She finds a road. She runs in the road, and then all of a sudden a car comes, and the car stops, and an older woman comes out, and she helps the final girl into her car, and they drive off. And then the movie just proceeds to follow this car ride with these two women. It's like a 10-minute long scene. When I was watching this, I thought they were building up to something. I thought they were just building tension. I thought something was going to happen, like a new twist was going to happen. My mind was going all over the place while watching this ending. For a second, I thought they were going to do the Friday the 13th twist and reveal that this older woman that has seemingly saved the final girl, I thought she was going to turn out to be Johnny's mother. But that turned out to not be true at all. And then the movie cuts back to the gas can, and we see now that the locket is gone. So Johnny took the locket and, went back to wherever. I don't know. And I just thought that was such a disappointing ending. I was like, what was the whole point of that car ride and the conversation about the bear and the story with the bear? I sort of get what they were going for. They're trying to link Johnny to the bear. Now, I have a lot of respect for this director. This is his directorial debut. Honestly, what they were able to accomplish with this film was great, but it seemed like he just was trying to make this film be something bigger than it actually was. I don't get why they would all of a sudden just abandon Johnny and then just follow this character that we basically know nothing about for the rest of the movie, for the end of your movie, like the most important part of your movie. You decide to just drop the whole slasher villain gimmick and just follow these two women in a car having a pointless conversation. I still think the movie is good. I still like the movie. I saw the potential in this movie. This movie could have been amazing. It really was so close to being great. But anyway, that's all I have to say about In a Violent Nature. If you've seen this movie, please tell me your thoughts down below in the comments. I read all of my comments. So I'm curious to see what you guys thought about this movie, especially how you thought about the ending. Did you guys like the ending? Do you agree with me that the ending was a letdown? Let me know. I want to hear your thoughts. Also, please consider liking the video. It really helps out a lot. And if you're not subscribed already, please consider subscribing. I want to see this channel grow. We've been growing at like a steady pace recently, little by little. But I really want to see this channel get big. I want to make more content for you guys. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. It is free after all. If you haven't seen my last video that I made about the movie Challengers, you can check that out right here, or feel free to check out any of the other videos that I've made. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.